Hi, I'm John McBride. I'm here at the Athletic Recreation Center, which we all know is a hub of recreation in Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. But did you know that it was also the site of the first Major League Baseball game? We're going to learn about this today with my guest, Kevin Adickes, on People and Places at PPR at Home.
Hi, my name is Kevin Adickes. I'm a Brewerytown resident and I run a local neighborhood resource called Brewerytown. I became interested in the area after moving here, and I was trying to uncover the rich history of everything that happened in this area from its development in the 1850s and on, and discovered that the historicity of this particular park was very, very rich indeed. It was originally called the Jefferson Street Parade Grounds and was used prior to the Civil War as a training ground for soldiers who were about to go into war. Baseball, or the New York game as it was called, was becoming increasingly popular at the time, and many teams were trying to find areas to play the game. These were happening in Camden and over in West Philadelphia, and the Olympics and the Mercantiles teamed up to lease this area from the city, and they started developing over here along Master Street. They built a little stand for them to sit in while they played, but there were no fences at the time, and so when they started to play, the area was defined by the people that would show up. They would pay 25 cents a person to show up, and there would be about 2,000 people lining around this without a fence. Some people who couldn't see would climb the trees over here, and they would call those people tree frogs. They were trying to watch the game without paying. Unfortunately, without the fences up, neighborhood animals would wander into the middle of games, disrupting them. So they brought in the Philadelphia Athletics, who were the most popular team in the area at the time. And the Athletics did a lot to actually resod the area, smooth out, because there would be giant humps in the ground that people would trip over while they're trying to catch a ball. So they would smooth out the area, and they erected a fence finally, and they were incredibly popular over here. A quick disclaimer, the Philadelphia Athletics that we're talking about are not the team that would go on to be the Philadelphia Athletics and then eventually transferred to Oakland and become the Oakland Athletics. However, these Philadelphia Athletics were part of the very first National League game that ever took place, which was on this field. And that National League went on to be the Major League Baseball, basically. That game took place in 1876. And there were supposed to be about 9 games played across the country that day. All of them got rained out, except for the one here in Philly, which was versus the Boston Braves. The birthplace of modern baseball is on these grounds right here. Another important historical event that happened here was the very first interracial game that ever occurred. And that was between the Olympics and the Pythians. And the Pythians were coached by Octavius Catto. And Octavius Catto was a civil rights activist who later died as a result of efforts to suppress black votes in the area in the late 1800s. Incredibly interested in baseball and cricket, and had a great passion for it, which led to him, as they found challenges that were not present for white players, they said, well, we'll play any white team. And the only team that took them up on it was the Philadelphia Athletics. So the Athletics grow increasingly popular, and they grow so popular that the grounds here cannot sustain the number of people that are coming, because they simply just don't have the money to keep up the level of refinishing and refurbishing that needs to happen. So they move over briefly to a spot in Fairmount, but they can't keep up with that stadium either. They're growing so popular, and they realize that the grounds here are bigger, so that they make plans to move back. When they discover that the original space had been vivisected by 26th Street and half of it was developed, sold to developers. They decided to move back anyway, and along this area over here, they build what the papers call the finest ball grounds in the country. It was a giant pavilion that could seat up to 10 to 15,000 people. That takes off. They're doing really, really well. But what increasingly is happening is there is a looming threat of a player strike. And that eventually happens. They try to play through the player strike. Things don't end up so well. They end up moving again and then eventually getting absorbed into the National League in Washington. And these grounds are kind of left for dead for a season. They were going to be refinished and potentially used again when a giant fire broke out. They say it was vandals in the area, and it burned down all of the stadium that was here, which was mostly made of wood. The reason I'm kind of suspicious of it being vandalism is a month later, the manager of the Athletics, his office burns down too. It seems like there might be something there. I don't know. And it's just, maybe it's a coincidence, but it also could be insurance reasons too. You never know. A few years ago, there was a local movement, and a movement that was supported by a lot of fans of baseball, historians, to get this listed as a national historic area, and that was successful. And now we have a plaque that documents the history of this area. So after that, the area kind of sits vacant. It becomes a point of public interest that people would come and play on. The city keeps threatening to sell it, when in the, I think the 1910s, this late era Victorian idea comes about. It's a progressive idea that public recreation spaces are a safety measure, and they are a public health measure. And they decide, we're going to build this amazing recreation center. In 1913 they do, and it's a very novel idea at the time. They have an amazing playground that they built. A lot of it would not be legal today. It was like giant metal bars that kids would climb up on, and there was the potential to fall onto concrete. They didn't quite know what they were doing yet, but their heart was in the right place, and a lot of the facilities and activities that they did actually did stand the test of time. We were talking about the boxing club. Many a successful boxer has come out of the ABC program, which is headed by former Recreation Center coach Fred Jenkins. The Athletic Recreation Center has been called the jewel of Brewerytown, and for good reason. It's a vital community resource that in the past year especially has proven itself to be essential over and over again, whether it's handing out food to children and families or providing a safe place for people to be during the day where they have nowhere else to go. It's indispensable.
It was a real pleasure having Kevin Adickes share the ballpark history of the Athletic Recreation Center and a little bit more. You can find out about the history of all our recreation centers and playgrounds by always tuning in to People and Places at PBR at Home. Thanks for joining me, everybody.